Okay everybody, it's time for video number 7. Let's get to it. There's no practical reason to build a cycle cart, you know. And now for a little bit of technical information. I've updated these drawings. The measurements you see here on these drawings will be the latest and greatest. I'm sure they'll continue to change. So this is revision number 1, 926. That's the elevation. Same thing here on the plan view. So I'm going to hold this on here a minute, as close as I can. And you can stop the tape to look at this, or the video. Okay, so that's the elevation side view. Here's the plan view. I think the measurements will come through. You'll be able to see them. Okay, so on these charts here, now you'll want to stop the video here, because what I did is I measured all 4 of my cars, and these are comparison charts here. So I'll get as close as I can, because you'll have to read these carefully. There are measurements all over the place here. And for those of you who are designing right now, this will make sense to you. Okay, now there's that one. And here is this one. Okay. Hopefully you can read those. Okay, moving on. 80 degrees in early November. You gotta love it. It's a perfect day. I've been messing around here with this mat board, creating a little mock-up here. It's the cowl support where the dash is and where the steering shaft attaches. Here's a section. These are the measurements I'm using right now. This represents the chassis. This is like you're looking at it like that way. So out of this mat board I made this right here. So I'm going to tape this to the chassis, then I can sit in the cart and decide if that's the height of the body. I use this funnel here for this shape, that radius. You remember my full-size front view drawing? Well, this is the pattern of that cowl support. And this funnel is pretty darn close to that. Okay. So I do have somewhat of a guide here. Alright. Moving on. Alright, so this version here, when I measure off the ground to the top of that, is 31 inches. That's actually a little bit too tall. I think I want to shoot for 28 or 29 inches to the top of this off the ground. I took the other seat out, and I'm experimenting with a back that doesn't slant quite as much. Now, one critical measurement is 27 inches from the face of the dash to the back of the seat, to the seat cushion, the face of the seat cushion. So I want 27. If I have a 1-inch piece of foam for the back, so I can move this back a little bit, which I want to do because when I sit in the car, the steering wheel, which would be right about here, feels too far away. Just doesn't feel right. So I might put a piece of wood in here so I can lean back on a little piece of foam. Okay. You might wonder why I'm going to this trouble. Well, I wanted to try to do a body a little bit different this time. One that was a little bit taller and a little bit wider at my shoulders. Basically so I could sit down in the car. I don't know if this concept is going to work, but if you notice that on the other cars the side drops down, but on my model it goes straight across. So anyway, I'll show you more on this body. It's a ongoing process. I've been thinking about it daily. But once I get this where I want it, then I can establish the angle of the steering rod and start working on a bracket. Okay. So now I've lowered this down to 30 inches. So taking 2 inches out of it, and then I moved it 1 inch back, and I added a piece of 1-inch foam. So now it's 27, a little heavy, and that's the bare minimum for me anyway to get in and out. Okay. And it looks better too, to me anyway. Alright, so continuing on. Okay, so this is more or less where I would be sitting right here. Steering wheel would be right here, slightly above the dash. That feels pretty good. So, right now, this measurement from the deck to here is 19.5 inches. So the steering wheel would be just below that. You see I have plenty of room here, even with my knees up. Okay. This is 27 in here. So, I like that measurement for me because I can get in and out of it. But you may want that to be 28 or 29. You just have to play with it. Okay. See, if I go with this height, 30 inches, the body will drop down and come right across here. So I'm sitting down inside the car instead of it dipping down and then my elbows being out. I don't know. So the body's going to have to be 25 inches. I measured it the other day. Alright. It may not work, but I'll keep moving in that direction. I'm going to do a cardboard mock-up, I suspect. One of the subtle things involved in designing a cycle cart is the angle of the seat back. So I use this adjustable bevel gauge here. So there's the old 27. Let's look at BMW. It should be the same. Yep. That's the same. And the monocar. Okay, so you'll notice that all three cars have the same angle. Now let's see what that is. Okay. I couldn't find my plastic protractor, so I printed one off of the internet. Okay, so what do we got? "14 degrees. 14 degrees, that's how I'm going to read it. Let's check this this one here. Switch hands. Yeah, that's pretty darn close. Maybe just this one's more like 15 degrees. Okay, so I'm playing with the angle of the back on the Studebaker. I'm thinking I want a more upright version. So with that piece of cardboard, bear with me here. Let's get this set. Okay. So I just arbitrarily picked that angle. So definitely more upright. Let's see what it measures. Okay, switch hands again. Okay. 7 degrees. Yeah. I think I like that better. At least for this car. Try something a little different. Definitely more upright. Because the back of the cab, so to speak, is going to come around and be right here, vertical. So, if I have this angled too much, then it pushes me forward in the tub. Alright, let's see. I think I'm going to make another seat blank. See how it looks. So I ran down to the shop and I cut up a piece of plywood and I cut it to that 7-degree angle. This is a little bit too long right now. I'll trim that to size. I got to figure out what height I want that to be. And then I have to put a taper to this. This is still square. I got to attach it together, make the cushions. Alright, I'll whip this out in nothing flat. Okay, so I have the carcass made here. I glued it, nailed it, and screwed it on there. So that's nice and stout. Okay, let's see how it looks inside the cart. Okay, I have the new seat blank in here. It's going to have a 1-inch foam back, and that'll leave a usable seat bottom of 14 inches. And if you establish 27 to 28 inches from, say, the front of this cushion to the dash, using 14 here, you'll have a spot where you can stand. You'll have to take off the steering wheel, but then you can step into the car with both feet, stand there, and then sit down. It's a subtle thing, but it goes to the comfort of driving the car, getting in and out of it. Okay, I'm going to make up the pads for this seat real quick, and then reestablish exactly where this cowl support goes. Right now, from here to here is 29. I want it to be 27-ish with the pad on. Okay, let's get that foam on there. Okay, I have the new seat in there. 1-inch foam here. And now, let's see here. From the dash to here, 27.5. Close enough for me. The top of this here, 28 inches off the ground. And then from the deck to the bottom of the dash, you notice I took some off here. This is only 3 inches now. And I got 19.5 there, deck to the bottom of it. So the steering shaft will be right there. I already sat in it, it feels pretty good. I'm going to go with this. Okay. If you wonder why I spend so much time on this, it's because I've come to find out that the seating position, where the pedals go, and then the steering wheel location, in my opinion, it's everything with respect to a cycle cart. If you get that right, it's going to be a fun car to get in and out of and to drive. Everything else just tends to fall in place if you can get that seating position correct. So that's why I spent so much time on this part right here. Okay, now I have the basis to establish the angle of my steering column, location of the steering wheel, and in relationship to where I sit. Okay, moving on. Finally. This is still pretty hot, but you can see I kind of have this pattern drawn out here on the top. So I have it pretty darn close. Yeah. So that'll be, this will be the temporary cowl. I'll put a piece of steel across here which will strengthen that. And then I have to figure out the length and bend the ends. It's getting there. So I have this piece of steel here. It's 3/16 by 4. And I lay this down on there, and it looks pretty good. So I use this to trace the shape. I'll cut it out with the bandsaw and then shape it with the belt disc until it fits in there nice and weld it up. And this is where the bracket will mount that carries the steering column. Oh yeah. Now we're talking. Okay, things are progressing. I got this all prepped and ready to weld in. I'm going to raise this up 1/4 of an inch. This is the rear of this cowl support. I also made a template here for the bracket that'll hold the steering shaft. This is, it'll be the same 1/8 inch steel as this. And it'll go like that. I've transferred it onto the steel here. I'm going to drill this 5/8 hole with the mill over there. And then I'll cut out the shape. Alright, getting pretty close to having this ready to bolt up. So my special little cowl support weighs 8 pounds. Okay, 8 pounds. Well, I spent the last 3 evenings building this temporary cowl support. You'll see later why this is temporary. But if I ended up keeping it, it's stout as all get out. I'm real happy with it. We'll call it the 8-pound superstructure. Okay, so eventually this bracket will get bent right here to an angle that'll match whatever it needs to be for the bracket that I make down here. Alright, pretty good progress here. This is Coming along nice. Okay, so how do you know what the angle of the steering shaft will be or should be? Well, that's determined by the height of your tie rods coming off of your spindle bracket. As you can see, these are the pitman arms, and you want this to be in line with where the heim joints will be. And that, in essence, gives you the angle. Since I have this little plastic rod here representing the tie rod is level. So I have to make a bracket that will hold the end of this rod and the bearing. So I'm going to make a paper pattern like I did, the upper bracket. Okay, and then this quick disconnect. So this is the type of setup where it gets welded. Here's the, it's from speedwaymotors.com, but there's the model number. Okay. So there'll come a point where I will have decided where that's going to go, and I'll weld this fitting onto the shaft solid. Okay. All right, we're getting there. Oh, these are little weldment fittings I bought from I think it was MFG Supply, mfgsupply.com. They weld. This is a bracket, pre-made bracket. I have it held on with a magnet right now, but I can weld that onto the spindle. Okay, so, and then somewhere around here I have some 3/8 rod. Right, here's the 3/8 rod. This is an upgrade from 5/16, which has a tendency to bend if you drive rough. So, anyway, I'm looking forward to making those. Okay, that's the basic anatomy of the steering. I'm getting there. All right. Okay, you can see where I'm going here with this. This is a piece of the same stock. And then I put a little bevel here to create the angle. It's kind of going to look like this. Then I'm going to put a gusset on the end of it to brace that, so that this thing will become triangulated and nice and strong. And then up here, I'm using the paper pattern to get that angle. So I'll bend this till it matches that angle, and that'll be pretty close. I've come to find out that, if you're close on these measurements, it works out just fine. I wanted this right here to be 1 3/4 above this, and it's 2 inches. So I'll just raise these brackets right here. I'll just raise them up a little higher to compensate. Okay, this is coming together nice. So I checked out the steering wheel position, and it's pretty good. The steering wheel is just slightly above this dash, which is what I wanted. And then once I get this fully mocked up, I'll drag this whole thing out in the shop there, and I'll weld this, tack it up. Yep, this is going to be a nice little setup when it's done. Okay, I have this angle established, and this rod turns freely in here. Yeah, that's going to work out. I'm going to put the locking collar right in here, which will space this out. See how that bolt hits right there? This has to be up about right there, and that'll function very nicely. So a locking collar there, and then there'll be a locking collar here. Alright, let's get this out in the other shop there and weld it up. So I'm out here where I can weld this up, and by the time I'm done, I'll have welded this into submission. It'll be all boxed in, and then I'll take it back in the other garage. I'll take off these spindles, I'll weld on these arms, and get into making the tie rods. Alright, I'm over the halfway point here. I'm on the downhill side of this one. Back in the house now. I added these funky little end plates here, but they did the job of bracing this whole structure. I have the locking collars roughly in place. So I'll have the shaft will stick out just a little bit here, and then that locking collar. Here's another one here. And then I'll have to put the quick disconnect to get the final length here. I'll cut that off. Also, I can go ahead and, yeah, that's going to work good. I can weld these pitman arms on. And you want them hanging straight down like that. That way when you turn right and left, you'll go right and left. Okay. Okay, so it's time to turn a bunch of parts and pieces into a steering shaft subassembly. So in a second here, I'm going to weld on the pitman arms, and then I'm going to weld on the fitting for the quick disconnect. Well, once I do that, then this piece, the dash bracket, remains part of this subassembly. I have split collars here, so they can come on and off at will. This one will end up being on here. I've marked it with tape, so that's where I want it to be. I've adjusted the length here. I've already cut this rod off a little bit. Now, I need to show you one more thing. Let me show you on the monocar. So on the steering wheel here, see the bolt pattern, the two here and the one here. That makes this, your button, your disconnect button, point straight out to the right. It could point straight down or any position you want it to be. But I like it pointing straight out. It's kind of a natural. You reach in, you push on it to get the steering wheel off. So I'm orientating that right now. So the pitman arms need to be plumb, straight up and down, and then this pointing 90 degrees out to the right. So I'll tack these up, and that'll be close enough for government work, as they say. Well, I love it when a plan comes together. I have everything installed here and tight. Borrowed the wheel off the BMW. Oh yeah. Okay, so the next order of business is I have to get these spindles. To get the brackets welded on so I can make the tie rods. Turning my attention to these spindle brackets, I have to pay attention here to make sure that I get it 90 degrees to the axle. And I need to be all the way up to the top of the spindle, because this ended up being a little bit higher up. I also have to drill this hole out to 3/8 because I'm using the larger heim joints and tie rods. Also, this doesn't exactly fit the spindle all that well. I'll have to make a piece to fit in here. So I thought I'd tack it first, then I can add the piece and weld it up nice and strong. I also have to relieve it right here because it'll hit right here. So I'll have to cut that arm back a little bit so I can get full travel. It isn't as easy as it looks, but I'll figure it out. I could have made my own bracket, but I thought I'd give these a try. Already pre-made. Alright, as long as I just put it together nice and clean and square, should be just fine. I think I've reached a milestone here. Have the spindles done. Got them all welded up. I'm happy with the way they turned out. I made a little relief notch right here and on the other one. Alright, now it's just down to making the tie rods. Won't be long now. I'm threading the tie rods now. This is a 3/8 24 fine thread. So I'm getting there. It's got to go down to that line there. Okay. When you're part of a cycle cart club, you go cycle karting. So it's Sunday afternoon, and I just got back from an outing with the other club members. We were out at John's place. We had 8 of our cars out there, and we were tearing it up. So I got a little bit of video of that. But I wanted to tell you, I finished the steering on the Studebaker. Alright, got the tie rods all finished and hooked up. And they worked out beautifully, actually. The little notch worked out good. Good turning radius. And a good torque on the steering wheel. Not too heavy, not too light. Alright, I'm very pleased. I'd say we can call this the end of video number 7. Alright, got a lot done this time around. So as always, thanks for watching, everybody.